The Dragon Blessing system is a system within GoTWiC which is a means of improving your account, yet it's something which, to my knowledge at least, hasn't received much guide or information coverage at all historically. So I thought a video going over every single detail of the Dragon Blessing system and exactly how I would approach it would be quite well placed. So just as a rough overview, you have 5 Dragon Blessing wheels. They will all unlock at a certain total blessing level breakpoint. So this first one will unlock by default. Then this second wheel will be unlocked when you have a total of 400 total blessing levels. Then 800 for the third wheel, 1,200 for the fourth wheel, and 1,600 for the fifth wheel. These 5 wheels will share similarities, but ultimately give different blessings all throughout. You'll be able to see all the total available stats and abilities down here in Blessing Bonus. So the first 2 wheels will provide enemy defense reductions. As you can see, defense reduction there, bowman defense reduction, spear defense reduction, cav defense reduction, and finally infantry defense reduction there. It'll be the same in the first wheel, as you can see, and then the third and fourth wheels will be total health or troop health reduction instead in those same spots, and finally the fifth wheel will be attack reductions in those same spots instead. So progressively as you go down, you'll get more valuable reductions in those spots. These top 2 slots here will provide dragon strength, which increases the damage of your dragon attacks passively, and on either far corner or either far side here, you'll see dragon defense there and there on every single wheel all throughout. But then the other slots will vary much more significantly. In these top corners, you'll have dragon protection, chance and reduction, and crit damage percent increase and crit chance percent increase. Crit chance will be a percentage chance to increase your dragon damage by your crit damage percentage. And on the same note, dragon protection chance will be a percentage chance of reducing the enemy's dragon damage onto you by your dragon protection damage reduction. Dragon protection, however, will not show in reports, and it's very awkward to view the full effectiveness of because of that. Whereas Dragon Crit instead will show in reports, so it's a lot easier to see the value of that. And then past that, you have your skills at the very bottom of this normal blessing wheel. The first and second will just be your construction and research speed on your Darkfire Dragon, and then it will be additional levels on your dragon. So this will be 5 stages with 2 higher levels as a max level for every blessing of this you get, up to a maximum of 5, which takes your max level of the dragon to 70. So the third will be Darkfire, the fourth will be Moonshadow, and the fifth will finally be Sapphire. Inside here, you'll have your advanced blessings. You can hit these through luck, but when you hit the total amount of lucky points, which will naturally stack when you use normal blessings, or you obtain normal blessings, you'll be able to spin the wheel, but it be locked into only this inner circle, and you'll be able to get a guarantee of anything that's in here, and there'll be the big blessing stone rewards inside, but also the advanced blessings, which can provide you varying skill adjustments, or perhaps even skins for your dragon, which could increase your stats passively. So these will be very linear in the stats they provide. They will be minus 10% reductions applied to your enemy passively when the skin is equipped on your dragon. On the second wheel, you'll have the Moonshadow skin. This will be 10% health reduction. On the third, it will be the Darkfire skin, which will be 10% enemy defense reduction. And then finally, you'll have your Sapphire skin, which will be minus 10% enemy attack reduction applied passively when the skin is equipped with a Sapphire. The other skills are a bit more varied, and you can see them all here in the Advanced Blessing Bonus tab. If you click down here in the bottom right, you can change the function of Dragon Bite to affect the highest tier troops instead of the lowest tier troops. You can execute a Lord immediately, so if you forget to stack Hoth for an event, you can just grab a Lord quickly before entry and then execute it immediately. Land of Adventure will increase all gains obtained from Dragon Exploration. You do get Blessing Stones from these Dragon Explorations, so if you hit this, you'll indirectly long-term be gaining more and more Blessing Stones. This also, from previous testing, affects all 3 dragons. So whilst it's listed as a Darkfire skill, it just increases Dragon Exploration gains by 20% flat. You'll be able to increase the maximum number of skill slots on each of the dragons by 1. So this can take the Sapphire up to 9 skills at total, and Moon Shadow and Darkfire to 7 in total. You'll be able to reduce the cooldown of Agile from 8 hours to 4 hours. Add another battle for Devastate to take effect and increase your merit income for 30 minutes by 20%. Instant Gather, you get a free badge here. Increase the total attack that your Sapphire will give when it participates in the battle, but primarily the ones that most players will want to be focusing on here will probably be the skins passively, the extra skill slot on their main dragon, probably Darkfire, and maybe the Agile cooldown as well. Now, as I've gone over all these wheels, they will all, of course, have the different skills I've been over. They also have different Blessing Stone and gold costs, you can see down here. So it starts at 100 Blessing Stones and 200k gold. On this first wheel, it goes to 150, 500k, then 200, 1 mil, then 300 to 2 mil, and then finally it'll be 400 Blessing Stones and 3 mil gold every single spin. This will churn through a lot of gold if you take this all the way to max blessing levels. So of course, because of the higher Blessing Stone costs of the higher wills, you will typically want to complete the lower wills first, or get as far progressed in them as you can before moving on to the next will, simply because it will be less efficient to put your Blessing Stones into the higher tier wills and get stats back from them. The issue with this is there's of course a finite amount of blessings you can actually get. Now when a blessing is max, like here, you can still hit it when you spin, and when you do hit it, you'll receive 20% of your Blessing Stones that cost to spin the wheel back, and potentially a few other things like gold or Horns of Awakening or stuff like that. But because of this, my approach at least is when you get between, I'd say, 3 to 5 of these normal blessings at max, I use that as the cue to move on to the next blessing wheel and start upgrading that. And then once you reach that same point, you move to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. I know a lot of players historically have got caught quite heavily in lingering on a single will, trying to chase a certain advanced blessing, or say dragon levels. I get it, and I'm not saying it's the wrong approach, particularly when you're chasing dragon levels, for example. But in terms of efficiency, I don't think it's ideal, because you're losing out on a lot of the passive stats if you just keep hitting maxes over and over and over again. Because I said at the start, remember, as you go down the wills, these passive stats you get do increase in quality. And like, say, this last will, yes, it's 400 Blessing Stones to actually roll the wheel, but it's giving you attack reductions instead of defense reductions on the first and second wills, for example. So the passive stats you're getting from these are of greater quality, whilst they are more expensive. Of course, you can always go back once you've finished or got close to finishing all the passive stats and not wasted unnecessary Blessing Stones chasing some of the advanced blessings or the dragon levels and whatnot. I think the one most players will probably find themselves stuck on will be this third will. That's because it has Darkfire dragon levels and crit damage and crit chance. So this will be a bit of a black hole for people through the dragon levels especially. You'll also want to be getting the extra skill slots. I know this can sort of lead people's dragon selection. So of course Moon Shadow, when it is max, is better than Darkfire, but you're going to be wanting that extra skill slot. And to a point, you can't force these skills because of how luck-based they are. So perhaps you hit your Darkfire extra skill slot here. Perhaps you hit your Moon Shadow extra skill slot here instead. very hard to predict, and to an extent, you're just going to have to roll with the punches and go with where your luck takes you in terms of what ends up being best. The one thing you do have some control over is this lucky point system. So I would say, even if you get to a point like here where you have most things maxed, and whenever you roll the wheel, you just keep hitting things you already have maxed and you're getting your stuff back, don't leave a large amount of lucky point progress on the back burner until later. If you're at, say, like 250 out of 350 here, just get that guaranteed advanced blessing in the middle and then move on. Perhaps this is a bit of a bad example because it's a bit of a bad will, but if it's set here and the stuff you want in this inside will, then make sure you're making the most out of your progress on these lucky points before you then move on to spending your blessing stones elsewhere. In terms of spending on this, I mean, you can see in here the passive stats you're getting from it aren't that crazy. They're good, but if you're spending money on it, these will never realistically be overly worth it. It will primarily be in the dragon damage that you're getting significant upgrades, so the crit damage, the crit chance, the protection, and the dragon strength and defense. And the only overly efficient purchase for Dragon Blessing Stones will be the weekly card, which you can of course see in here. So it will be 100 black diamonds for a week's worth of 600 blessing stones a day, so a total of 4,200 blessing stones for 1,000 BD. This will be really the only efficient way of buying this. You'll get a good amount out of Merchants of King's Landing if you're grinding T5 books as well. Outside of that, though, I wouldn't rush it because, of course, there is a limit that you're going to hit. And if you overly invest into maxing out your Dragon Will, and then you get to a point, obviously, where you're at the max blessing level, any you get through free-to-play means past that point will then be irrelevant to you, and you've potentially wasted money. So I wouldn't rush it whatsoever. But weekly card, Merchants of King's Landing, those will be the two main things. You'll get quite a nice passive income of blessing stones from to just supplement your natural progression. I would try and chase primarily dragon crit chance and dragon crit damage. I may be being slightly biased with that because protection doesn't show in reports, but I think that will be the best stat on these outer wheels that you can get. That, and then the levels to your main dragon that you're trying to use, and the extra dragon skill, of course. Above all, just try and be smart with how you use your blessing stones. Try and not unnecessarily roll into max slots over and over again, trying to chase something you just don't have much control over. My approach would always be trying to maximize my floor rather than my ceiling. So try and put these blessing stones into the wheels you don't have a huge amount of these max slots, just so that your blessing stones don't go to waste.